we realized that there was a need for women of our country to stand up.
The way I was overwhelmed, seeing women coming, determined to do what they want to do.
One thing that fascinated me is that how they managed to get 20,000 people to show up. And these were women who came from all over the country.
In international news, an estimated 20,000 women have marched to the Union buildings in Pretoria, South Africa, to present a petition protesting the extension of past laws to African women.
(1910) is important for a few reasons. It's the year that marks the coming into existence of the modern country of South Africa. In 1910, it was obviously still under white rule. And what's significant about 1910 is that the two former Boer colonies and the two British colonies come together into one. In the British colony of the Cape, a significant thing for what we are going to discuss has to do with the fact that black men in the Cape had the vote. They were able to vote men into positions as members of parliament, and they themselves could also be members of parliament. This was because of something that was called the liberal tradition in Cape politics. It was a real sticking point in 1910 when Union was formed, because none of the other three colonies wanted black men to have the vote. So the vote remained only with black men in the Cape. First few years of Union were used by the white government at the time to pass a whole host of laws that were very negative for black South Africans.
It is an undisputed fact that for the healthy development of culture, whether national or individual, there is necessary a certain measure of seclusion and isolation.
And the one that probably sticks in people's minds most is the 1913 Land Act. This act, together with another one in 1936, reserved 13% of South Africa's land for black occupation. So as you can imagine, this kind of activity was productive of a lot of anger on the part of black South Africans. And some of that anger was channeled in 1912, I know I've gone back a year here, into the formation of something called the South African National Native Congress, which we would know today as the ANC. And the ANC was formed in order for black men around South Africa to have an avenue to protest the increasingly racist legislation being passed by the South African state. Now, one of the things that is clear to see in the formation of the ANC is that this is a body that didn't really think about women as active political protesters, which any amount of thinking would tell you was probably the wrong idea. Charlotte Maxeke is an example of a group of educated African women, mostly educated in mission schools. She came from the Eastern Cape, who were active firstly through their churches. So the churches are very important, the Christian church is a very important part of this early story. And through women's manyanos and women's societies in the churches, women like Charlotte Maxeke gained organizational experience and the communities that would allow them to take part in public life. So it's interesting to note that some of the earliest protests, overt protests against the South African government, occurred in 1913. These were past protests in a location in Bloemfontein where a number of women, probably up to about 200 women, led by Charlotte Maxeke, led a protest against the fact that women were being asked to carry night passes. That is, permits that would allow them to move around at night. Now, one of the reasons that the women were supported in this is because their husbands and their guardians had a dislike of white men legislating and determining the behavior of black women, taking away the power of black men themselves to control the activities of black women. This 1913 past protest is understood as the start of a long and sustained tradition of black women's protest against unjust laws in South African history. Oh, there we go, look.
When we look back, I think that the person who broke the pathway to establishing that principle was Charlotte Maxeke. The ANC did not allow women to be a member when it was formed. But she is one of the few women that attended the ANC National Conference in 1912. She led the women's demonstrations in Bloemfontein. She established the Bantu Women's League in 1918. And that laid the basis for what culminated in the African Women's League, which was established in 1948.
So the kind of patriarchy present in white society was not the same as the kind of patriarchy present in black society. Instead, what you see is a much more assertive white female working class population, and that has to do with, I'm jumping to the end of the 1920s here, the Great Depression around the world, the fall of the stock market in 1928. And that led to a lot of white Baywoner living on the land, families in white farms, not being able to sustain their livelihoods, and white women moved to South Africa's cities, young white women in huge numbers, where they joined industry. They became garment workers in the Cape, in the Transvaal. They joined factories in the Cape that were canning fruit and vegetables. You know, your Koo canning plants, everyone's had a can of Koo baked beans. Those industries were around in the 1920s and 30s. But when white women moved into those industries, working class white women, It was also the start of unionized activity in South Africa.
A lot of the women came from the trade union movement, and particularly the Food and Canning Workers Union, overwhelmingly women. The main organizer was Ray Alexander. She'd come off the boat in a teenage period, not speaking English, Jewish families being persecuted in Eastern Europe, socialist ideas, revolutionary ideas, and she became the organizer of the Food and Canning Workers Union. When I became an advocate at the bar in Cape Town, I did a lot of work with the Food and Canning Workers Union, and my phone would ring and comrade so-and-so's just been locked up, so-and-so's been locked up. I'd try to get bail for them. I'd defend workers who had gone on strike when it was illegal. And there was that sense of women organized as workers, claiming their rights as workers all over the world. As people of color, we didn't use those phrases in those days, but subject to white domination. And as women.
My getting involved in the freedom struggle actually was a result of my leaving school early. Because also being as young children short of money, pocket money, and also wanting to have the better things for yourself. So I would go to, there was a weaving factories, a spinning mills, not too far from where we live. And I would go there during the school holidays and work in the factory. And there was always this ill treatment of the staff or the workers themselves, the spinners behind the spinning wheels inside of the factory. And my curiosity and my militancy spoke to me. So I was always interfering. And when there was issues of the workers, and I would hear about it, they would always send me to go and speak up for them, to articulate their problems and so on. And so I became a shop steward. And gradually I left school because now I was more involved and I actually enjoyed it.
Moving through from the 1920s into the 1930s, I just need to point out that although there is a significant resistance to black women leaving their rural homes, the rise of industry, the development of secondary industry, the rise of a domestic labor market in centers like Johannesburg means that you see tremendous rural-urban migration in the 1930s. And the black female population of Johannesburg rises astonishingly quickly during this particular time period. So in 1925, there wasn't really a significant sized black female population in Johannesburg. There are a couple of million in the mid-1930s. So this gives this ability to earn income that had previously been blocked to them, to enter industries that were previously not open to them, gives a lot of confidence to all working women, but especially to black women. Towards the end of the 1930s, it's clear that the ANC as an organization has basically become a group of elite men who aren't actually doing that much to promote the cause of black independence in South Africa. This is starting to change into the early 1940s. In 1944, the ANC Youth League is formed. And so it's almost a period of a decade of rejuvenation, if you like. It's rejuvenation both within the more broader politics of the ANC, but also within the politics of women who've been agitating since 1918 to join the ANC, but who have been not allowed to be full members.
There's a way in which you look at history as linear and about big moments. So for example, women, I'll talk about the ANC because that's the liberation movement I'm familiar with. So for example, women were not allowed to be full members of the ANC until 1943. They were auxiliary members. But that tells a little bit of the story. If you dig a bit deeper, you will find that these women who were not allowed to be full members, were auxiliary members, were in fact playing roles like those of men.
But I also want to cast the lens wider to think about the different groups that were involved in protest politics in the 1950s. So the 1950s are known as the decade of protest in South African history because 1948 is when the apartheid government comes into power. Is much looser in the early 1950s than we might think looking at it backwards from today.
They convened a Parliament of the People in Kliptown in 1955. A charter envisaging a future non-racial democracy in South Africa was adopted.
So I don't want to suggest, for instance, that the ANC was the only party that was protesting against apartheid. The Transvaal Native Congress is probably a bit more active than the ANC overall. The Pan-African Congress is also gaining traction. In the Cape, there is something called the Non-European Unity Movement. There are different organizations active in the Eastern Cape. There are also organizational politics that aren't tied to any particular organization. There is the development of what becomes known as the Charterist movement after the Freedom Charter, the Congress of the People as it becomes in 1955. And you also have a group of women who start organizing across racial and organizational lines called the Federation of South African Women. And FEDSAW, or FSAW as it's known sometimes in the literature, is a much more powerful organization, if I can use that term, than the ANC Women's League at that particular point in time.
In 1954, the Federation of South African Women adopted the Women's Charter. And the Federation of South African Women was a platform that brought together women in the ANC, women in the Congress of Democrats, which was the white women, women in the Colored People's Congress, it's a self-explanatory, and the Indian congresses. And these women were all Congress-aligned women. But the African leaders in the ANC were not comfortable. You know, it was a conflictual kind of thing. They knew that women had to be part of the Federation of South African Women, but they were also not comfortable. They felt that these women, the black women, would be dominated by the white women in the Federation of South African Women and so on. So there were tensions.
So it's clear from the early 1950s that one of the things the apartheid state wants to do is to control the movement of black women. And the signs are on the table early on that one of the reasons for doing so is to limit black occupation in cities. That's tied to another set of legislation that will be passed, like the Group Areas Act, which is passed in 1950. So the apartheid state has all sorts of plans. In order to bring about these plans correctly, it needs to further limit the movement of women.
In South Africa, you can only achieve peace by separating the nations.
Some of the things disgrace to a person who make a law of that kind. The main thing is an influx control, which is their content to that reference book. This is one of the dirtiest things. Because the influx control, it deprives you to get a job to work for your family.
When women have got to come all the way from the Transkei to come and see their men there in the city staying in hostels, and they can't find any other accommodation for their wives. So they have to stay with them in the hostels. And what happens is, during the night when they sleep, there are police raids. They are arrested for being in the cities, for not having passes or not qualifying to be in that prescribed area.
About 4 o'clock, they wake them up. 4 o'clock in the morning, they catch them. And the women, they screaming. They just pull them in the van.
The 1950s was a time of mass mobilization. You had the Defiance campaign in 1952, then the Congress of the People in 1955, which mobilized a lot of people. The process of getting the Freedom Charter, putting it together, that raised people's awareness. And the ANC moved from being a small organization to being a mass movement. So that was the context in which they organized. But then the pass laws, before men had to carry passes, women didn't have to carry passes. And it was that for the women that sparked, that ignited this fervor and anger. And because also it would mean profound changes in their lives, their freedom of movement.
I used to go. As soon as I go, the woman will say, right, if you come and tell us about the pass laws, we don't want passes. That's how we used to organize the women. And we have a group of a women until we have a huge number of the women.
Two currents now beginning to connect up. The one is passes for black women. You know, that the fear that it induced, the indignities, because the women are feeling now, you know, our men are insulted as human beings, as men, as persons, being stopped in the street and asked, produce your pass. Any policeman could just walk into our homes. It could be a little pondoki, a shanty, it could be a little cement place in Langa location, as it was called then. Where's your pass? Some of the personalities I remember in Cape Town, Annie Selinga, she lived in Langa. She said, I'm not going to carry a pass. It's just a great story there, just her. She could barely speak English. I didn't know Xhosa. We loved each other. We just beamed when we hugged and met, and every time she's arrested, I'd have to go to court to get her off. And she was put on trial for treason. So here's this woman with maybe 4 years schooling, so proud of her identity, making this simple decision, and she's on trial with Albert Lutuli and Oliver Tambo and all the great leaders. But she represented that spirit of defiance. Daughter Tamana, living in a pondoki on the sands, quite close to Busenberg. Everybody went to her for advice. Elizabeth Maxeke.
When these passes came in, so I refused to take one. You may be in bed with your husband late in the evening, at about 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock. The police will just come and knock at your door, asking for a pass. Taking the women, taking your daughter to different cells. What's going to happen? The police itself is going to rape you with your child there.
Because these passes are sending them a lot to the jail and leave the children without care. The father will go to work and leave such a small little things alone. Who will do the cooking for them? Who will do the washing for them? Who will save the little ones like this from all the troubles if the mother is not there?
under the leadership of Goy, Mam Francis Bard, Florence Motomela, and all these giants of women. That was on the executive of the Women's League. So we started mobilizing because there was a conference. In this conference, it was explained about the passes that was going to be extended to women. And the women are already up in arms in the different districts and townships and in the provinces. Of course, as you know, there were only 4 provinces at that time. In every province, there were these leaders of the movement. And under their leadership, the issue was taken up. Then it was the conference to be held because of the extension of passes. This conference came about. But the long and the short was that women rejected carrying a pass, but what is to be done? And then at another conference, one woman got up and said, her name was Margaret Gaso. And Margaret Gaso got up and said, but women, why are we waggling like this? We keep talking and talking. Why don't we do what the Black Sash has done? The Black Sash went to the union buildings and stayed there. They squatted there for a week. Let's do the same. Let's call them to be with us. And there was excitement at that sort of a proposal. Everybody was happy, and the proposal was accepted that we will go to the union building to show our objection against the pass laws. So it was from that time that the mobilization and organization started. And that was the day of a Thursday.
One thing that fascinated me is that how they managed to get 20,000 people to show up. Because at that time, they didn't have cell phones, of course. They didn't have social media. The radio was controlled by the regime, so they couldn't make announcements on the radio. They also didn't have phones. You know, in the 1950s, telephones were not common. You would find in a neighborhood maybe one person at the shop or at the principal's house would have a phone, but generally people didn't have telephones in their houses. So it's fascinated me as to how did they manage to communicate with each other. And these were women who came from all over the country, from the Cape, from KZN, from the north. So how did they manage to mobilize more than 20,000 women?
But we had Helen Joseph, who was the secretary of the White Medical Aid Society. Our planning and our mobilizing was mainly done from Helen's office, because we could do the typing there, the Roneo of printing and so on.
Also, the other big thing is that they came at their own cost. They didn't, there was no organization that paid for buses for them to come en masse. They had to pay for themselves. So you can imagine someone from the Cape or someone from Natal or the right North Limpopo having to pay their own train fare, their own bus, or hire a car or whatever it was. They had to figure it out themselves. So they said they had sales. Some people sold their jewelry. Masisulu spoke about a woman who sold her wardrobe. Others made cake sales. So they had to raise money for themselves.
The fact that a lot of organizing for the 1956 march happened under the nose of authorities, because women went door to door to look for contributions for stockings for church women. And in that process of talking about stockings, contributions for stockings, and then they were passing the message around the march. There are very interesting forms of organizing where women in our history have taken the stereotypes and actually used them in order to work, to do political work under the noses of authorities.
The question would be asked, where were the men? Were they supporting the women even on the day of the march? They were very quiet, especially the leadership of the Congress movement. And as the time got closer to the 9th of August, Helen and Lillian was called to the Congress office, and they reported to Rahima and myself that Uncle Walter, who was the Secretary General of the ANC, had summoned them to his office. And when they got there, he asked them. He was annoyed, and he asked them if they know what they are trying to do. And so they were puzzled. Lillian says she was puzzled, and she asked what Uncle Walter meant. And Uncle Walter said, "But you know what I mean." And she said, "No, I don't." He said, "You are misleading the women."
He always made it look as if he really didn't worry about women. Because if we went to him, he'd say, "But what, this is what we want to do." He'd say, "These women are mad." But then, for some, we got to know that this was just some that it was a phrase that he had, or a sentence he had got used to. Say, "These women are mad." In fact, we called him "These women are mad." Even when we were preparing for the march to Pretoria, because it was organized long before. It was Walter Sisulu who gave us very great support. Not that the other leaders didn't, but the other leaders felt that it's going to be very difficult for us to succeed, to bring all the women from all over South Africa to the union buildings, and that we will fail, and it will not be good if we fail.
Men had considerable reservations. The idea that women were equal players in public life was an idea that contradicted the notions of patriarchy under which all sectors in South Africa grew. It contradicted the idea of equality of all, because apartheid was based on the principle of racial discrimination. It also contradicted the class contradictions that existed in society. So the struggle, even just to establish the principle, was a long one.
On the eve of August the 9th, there was such an influx of women from the countrysides that made sure that they will be in Johannesburg so that they don't miss out. They didn't know where they were going to sleep with their babies on their backs. They just knew that they had to come. And so the headquarters where I was working from was very busy. We didn't expect the women to come, but they came. And that is where the Indian Youth Congress played a great role under the leadership of Ahmad Kathrada. Ahmad Kathrada was sort of heading the Youth League. And he molded them and groomed them. And so they were very busy collecting foodstuff from the Indian merchants around that area, getting blankets from the Indian merchants in that area, and so on, and making sure that everybody had food, had a place to sleep. So the morning came for women to go to the union, to march to the union building.
Apartheid ela ya kgale ela ke ge ke le ko Pietersburg, New Pietersburg ko di-Stanseng. And then ka mokgwa maburu nna ba re tshwere ga gona ge wena or moshimane or o tla bošego le ge se bošego thata mara ka bo 6 e le marega o sene le pampišane ba re ke pasa go kae tiketinyana go sena ba o tswara ba o iša tronko ke tlogile ko ke le 17 years ko sekolong ke tla gae ko Pietersburg ke tloga ko gae ka re ga nna ko bereka ke sa nyaka sekolong ka tlogela sekolo ke le 17 years ka tla Pretoria ke seno ke tla mo Pretoria ka bereka ka ba ka nyalwa a lenyalo la fela ka no bereka go fitlhela go di jwale sa le ka ira nursingnyana ka apply nursingnyana ka bereka nursingnyana bile ke lebetse gona mo toropong ka bereka sebaka mo ko nursing ka fetsa 3 years ko nursing ba tla ba re ke retired ka tswa ka bereka di-kitchenyana ka fetsa ka tla ka dula ka gae ka no bereka ke itswa till now ne ke le gona no go sene ntwane ebile ga ba lwa re no fitlha rena re fologile bese mo Bomb Street go tona mo Pretoria ra fitlhela nna re bone batho ba bantšintše no go fisa na ra itulela mo fase ra batho ka bantši man ro nna kae jale mo ne re dutse go right jane ba le ba tletse ko officing ko ampere ko toropong rena ra itulela gona mo ra sala mo dituletse.
They walked to the union buildings, helped one another who didn't know the way to get there. They were on the trains singing happily and rejoicing. It was a happy and a joyous time to meet everybody, women that you didn't know. And there was that festivity air amongst the women at that site. But then it came time, and as we were just socializing with one another, one of the women said, no, let's get ready to go meet with Stridon. And she put us all in a line. Few of them did that, putting us, the front liners, in front. And they all fell behind us. Very disciplined. No pushing and strolling one another orderly. So we march up. The union building steps, very, very dignified, very disciplined. Some women had babies on their backs, but they marched up. And when we got to the top of the union buildings, the administrators were very shocked to see these black faces for the first time. There were black faces in the union building grounds. They were shocked and surprised and mystified. And they clambered on the windowsills and on the rooftops to watch this spectacle. And we were put in what we call the amphitheater.
Yes,
the dome, the four of us. And as we stood in the dome, and I looked at the army of women, all spread out on the grass, you know, it was so emotional from happiness to see that this army of women, which we never anticipated, would be so many.
I was in Durban at that time, but looking at the photographs, look at the number of women who came with their little kids carried on their back. They were still breastfeeding their kids, but they marched with their kids. And they came from all over the country. They took days to come over to the march. And the most striking moment was that after they handed over the petition, that 20,000 contingent of women stood silent for 30 minutes.
So we were in the amphitheater. And then Mom Lillian Ngoyi said, she made her address and said that now we are here, we have come, you have mandated us to come and see Strydom, so we are ready to march to his offices. So this is what happened. And then he said, Mrs. Strydom isn't in. And she said, but we wrote to him that we were coming, he ought to be in. And he said, no, he's not here. And she said, are you sure he's not here? And he just said, yes, I'm sure. And she said, okay, yeah, give this to him. So she took her pile of petitions and she thrust it on him. And Helen also pushed hers on top of him, he had this. And then Rahima, by the time I pushed mine, it all fell down from his arms. And I think it was Mom Lillian that said, you can pick it up and give it to him and tell him to eat it up. So we went back to the amphitheater, and Mom Ngoyi said to the crowd that we went to see Strydom, but he ran away for you, he wasn't there. And that is when the crowd started singing.
And then we also grab the policemen, and then we fall on the ground, and then when we fall on the ground, they caught us
And they arrested us, they put us into vans, and they went away with us.
Ah.